Yeah, we can do that.
Good morning. Good morning. We have a small delay due to the traffic today. Our presenter is en route. But what I'd like to do is to thank you all who are here present and virtually to attend the Valdry Center for Philanthropy at Southern University, on the campus of Southern University and College here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We're excited today to have Beverly Brooks Thompson. She is with Carter Consulting, and she will be talking about governing, correct? Right. And board development, primarily nonprofits, and that's why we're all here today in person. Thank you for being here, and those of you who are online. I'm Terry Braden, Director of Programs here at Southern University on campus in Baton Rouge at the Valdry Center for Philanthropy. That is our facility for the Southern University System Foundation. Boy, all of that today, this morning, has really gotten me a little tongue-tied. But the Valdry Center for Philanthropy is an academically based research center focused on philanthropic studies and nonprofit management. VCP seeks to educate the socially conscious student, volunteer, and practitioner in the emerging field of philanthropic studies through exploring the economic, historical, and philosophical rationales for voluntary action in the local, national, and international arenas. You know, the Valdry Center is the brainchild of the dreams of Leon, Warren, and Virginia Valdry. They are 1957 and 1959 graduates here at Southern University. And I think my parent and aunt and uncle may have crossed paths during that time. The Valdry's philanthropic impact has influenced giving throughout the Southern University system for more than 50 years. This building that we are in today was supported by the Valdry family, this multi-million-dollar two-story facility. Also, the Kellogg Foundation really saw the vision that the Valdrys had and also matched their support. We want to acknowledge the sizable contributions that Leon, Warren, and Virginia Valdry have made to their alma mater and the need to support excellence in education at HBCUs by endearing to create a culture of philanthropy, promote racial equity, and provide a trained workforce to help direct volunteer action and charitable resources toward communities in need. This is the first of our series of the 2025-2026 speaker series here today. We hope that you all will register, if you have not already, for the remaining 3 seminars that we will host. One, October 1st, the other 2, March and April of 2026. The mission of the Valdry Center at Southern University seeks to educate the socially conscious student, volunteer, and practitioner in the emerging field of philanthropic studies through exploring the economic, historical, and philosophical rationales for voluntary action in the local, national, and international arenas. We thank you all again for being here today at the Valdry Center for Philanthropy to hear Dr. Beverly Brooks Thompson present on board governance and leadership. She will be with us shortly. Thank you. While we're waiting, I would like you all to visit your email, and those of you who are here, we have the outline for today. it's very important for us to present to you all the details and summarize today's workshop.
Good morning.
I will pause and we'll be right back with you. Our speaker has just made it to the building, but while we're here, those in person, I'd like to introduce you all to Marlon Hollins. He is the Advancement Director here at Southern University Foundation with the School of Nursing and Allied Health. We'll let him share the activities at this time.
Yes, ma'am. So good morning, everyone. Marlon Hollins here, Director of Advancement, like she said, for the Southern University College of Nursing and Allied Health. I always like to start off my introduction by saying I'm a son of the system. I earned my undergraduate degree and law degree here from Southern. But as it relates to fundraising, the growth and the outcomes that we've had under the leadership of Vice Chancellor Sandra Brown, we've seen a record number of fundraising over the last 5 years, also a record number of enrollment. From our national recognition to what we are positioned now for growth. So how you doing, Ms. Beverly? Nice to see you again. So I'm excited, super excited about this engagement because what we've realized is being involved in several boards, several organizations, and having a seat at the table has led to long-term sustainable funding from seed gifts to long-term gifts. And leveraging our advisory board of supervisors, and all of our stakeholders has turned into relationships in Louisiana and beyond. We are in the final phases of being shovel ready for our expansion of the J.K. Hayes Hall in April. And a part of that is board engagement, leadership engagement. From Dean Brown's leadership and positions she have on the board, all of the hospital relationships, we are securing or have secured investments with them upwards of $1 million. From Baton Rouge General, Our Lady of the Lake, we're talking to Women's, we're talking to Ochsner about furthering investments, but we found that the decisions from the voting on the board and how you get to the table to be being considered starts off with board engagement. So I sat under Miss Beverly and another program that I've worked with, and she mentioned she would be presenting here, and the wealth of knowledge I got, I know I need to implement it in my personal and professional life. So excited to have you. It was interesting when you presented, though.
All right, well, thank you so much to Marlon Hollins. Now that our presenter has arrived, I'd like to not delay any further the information that Beverly Brooks Thompson will share with us today. Thank you, Beverly.
Thank you. Good morning. I apologize. So I left an hour ago. Baton Rouge traffic got me. No excuse. First rule of board governance and leadership: always be early. So thank you. I had big plans. Believe it or not, we are on time, but I'm going to skip the part where I get to know you. But what I would like to invite is, I know we have folks online too. If there are questions, ask me as we go. I can't really see the online questioning, but we'll keep a piece at the end to make sure. So I'm hoping we have board membership in the room as well as nonprofit leadership in the room. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, Terry has told me that, and that is fantastic news. It's nice to be joined and have some friends in the room. I'm going to ask you to make sure that I have 15 minutes on time. Okay, perfect. So we're here to talk about board governance and leadership, and let me compliment you on the fact that you are even thinking about the word governance right now. Most nonprofit organizations, unless they're going through some kind of really difficult situation, somebody's done something terrible, and or you're brand new and seating a board, or you're looking at a capital campaign, most people don't think about these things. They talk about them in reference, but like the brass tacks of board governance and leadership is extraordinarily important. So I will make this deck available through Ms. Terry in PDF form. This is a seminar that me as a consultant, do pretty frequently around the world. So I'm going to suggest it is not new information, and where I have sourced information, I have referenced that because I'm an academic professor too, and I feel strongly about that. But this is proprietary information. So that being said, I make money doing this for a living. I'm going to ask you not to use my deck to do that. That's my only ask today. You're welcome to share it with your board, or I'll just come do it for free for you. Okay, so that being said, we're going to flip through. The intended results today really are us coming to a collective agreement on shared leadership, planning, and governance. I want to talk a little bit about what the real leadership roles are of the board versus the CEO or executive director. And I'm going to use those two terms interchangeably because I know we have both in the room, and functionally they are the same thing. It means the top leader of a nonprofit organization. We're going to talk about fundraising expectations. And if I were going to ask everybody in the room, how many of you like to raise hands? There's only one guy named Robert over here that's going to say, yeah, I absolutely love to raise money. Most people don't get onto boards thinking, gosh, I'm going to be one of the leaders in fundraising. So we're going to talk about that and what that real role is for a board member and how leadership can put them in action to serve the organizations in ways that feel really comfortable to those board members. I'm going to show you the required policies and procedures. We're not going to take a deep dive on that. I'm going to tell you what you must have. And the end of this deck, where I'm not going to go through, is all the things I make my public policy students learn on how to read a 990 and where to have that information. But I thought it would be really important for you on the back end to look at the type of documents that board members should be presented when they're serving on a board, and nonprofit leaders should feel like it is their duty to show them. So you have a frame of reference for some of the things. A lot of people in board governance, particularly in philanthropy and fundraising, are asking about trends to watch. And that doesn't just mean fundraising in that case, but what are the real governance trends? And if I could see all of you online and ask you who's worried about AI and governance, 99% of you are going to say, I'm a little freaked out about that. So I'm going to give you a framework that we're using, and I'm part of the Philanthropy.ai framework on how we should be thinking from a governance perspective. And probably the most important thing is, how can we be asking the right questions? Because it is a wild, wild west. We got big guns here. Hello. Good to see you. So now two people like to fundraise. Dr. Harrell, great to see you. So a little bit on trends to watch, and then again, that fiscal and legal responsibility. So shared leadership is a very, very important thing in nonprofit leadership. It is not just the CEO's job, and it is not just the board's job, and it's not just the person counting the money's job. It's not just the person at the front desk job. It's everybody singing from the same page. So I like to say we start with shared mission, vision, and values always, and everybody needs to be really crystal clear on the mission. Because your job as nonprofit leaders, frankly, is to put your organization out of business. Now what? You're solving a need on behalf of the community that we would hope one day is no longer a need. The reality is we know most days it's going to stay a need, but with that framework, we have to be mission-centric. Are we raising money for puppies? Are we raising money for baby feet in the NICU? Are we raising money for students to have scholarships and access to higher education? Everybody needs to be really clear on what the mission in the heart is and be able to tell their own story. We're going to talk a little bit about story today, but the board is here, leadership is here, and successful outcomes. But development or institutional advancement, which is really fundraising, is here. It is not just on their shoulders. It is not just on the program coordinator's shoulders, the folks that are actually doing the work with the people that you serve. But they need to know the board's vision and mission at all times. And operations and administration They need to know what their role is, and they need to know that they're serving a greater good too. And that is not just for the successful outcomes, it's because, I'm gonna make you quote it, what's the act? I'm kidding. The War Act of 1917 and 1918 makes the IRS our boss. You are beholden to the IRS in legal and fiscal responsibility. That is the guiding agency that regulates nonprofits. I bet that's probably a learning for most of you. It certainly was for me. So I don't talk bad about the IRS, but it's not my favorite thing until we get into this space. But all of you are in charge of successful outcomes, but of course the board sets that mission, vision, and tone, and the leadership team that is paid to be there executes that plan, and we'll talk about that a second. So questions, if you don't ever look at another slide today, again, print this one out. What are the questions that I really need to be thinking as a board member? What is the mission, vision, strategy, and related plan for this particular organization? What's the market share, and market dynamics affecting growth? I do not believe in the concept of competition in fundraising. All boats rise. Some people and some organizations just have a stronger message. So we're not competing against each other. We are all here for the public good. However, there are limited resources when you get into fundraising. So telling our story and our mission and our vision over and above becomes extraordinarily important. So storytelling, believe it or not, has a whole lot to do with market and market share. The most courageous thing I'm seeing right now in nonprofit organizations is realizing that they need to merge with other organizations. For boards having the courage to say, you know, we're a cancer palliative care organization, and it's becoming really difficult for us to raise money because the market has shifted and all these hospitals are raising money. So there was actually a board governance award given recently here in Baton Rouge to Mary Bird Perkins and Cancer Services for merging their organizations. I cannot tell you how courageous that was, because it deals with people all day long, not just the people wearing the badges of who works there. And some of those, they were there for a very long time, but it also had to do with, will these patients be served in a stronger, faster way? They kept it to the mission and vision. And it was very complicated, but it was very courageous. So how does the board function in terms of governance, human resources, conflict, shareholder communication, and values and ethics? With the exception of the IRS's regulations on what you are fiscally, monetarily, and legally responsible for, we are an ethics-driven profession, period. When I take a test, and Al and Robert take tests, and Ms. Terry on the CFRE, the Certified Fundraising Executive, that's really an ethics test. It is not a how are we regulated test. So values and ethics become paramount, and we need to talk about them. And most organizations haven't been talking about ethics much until AI. And AI is being framed. Philanthropy and nonprofit boards are leading the conversation in the world on how we build a governance framework in regards to AI, because everybody else is regulated like a publicly traded company and by different laws, but ours is based on ethics, so we actually have the greatest framework, so you're ahead of the game. So how do we recruit, retain, compensate, and attract talent? I would suggest if I asked Al Harrell over there what his biggest challenge is besides raising money, he could say people. And we haven't talked about that in over 2 years, but finding the right people to help us raise money and finding the right people to count that and backing into housing, talent is hard to find. And we have 5 generations working in the workforce right now. It's unprecedented in U.S. history. And my Generation Z children don't talk really well to their traditionalist bosses in higher education right now. It's been really fun. They had lots of feelings about that. We're not going to do that dive, but it is fascinating. You know, human resources is really a challenging thing when you have to recruit and retain and compensate 5 different generations: traditionalist boomers, Generation X, millennials, and Generation Zs. They all want different things. How do we report community impact? Number 1, how do we tell our story about the people that we serve? And are there any risks to the organizations? Fiscal, reputational, and compliance. So let's talk about those. More questions to consider, and these are much more fundraising centric. So I'm not going to make you print these out and hang them on your computer, but they are important. What's the unique role of philanthropy in your organization, and for what purposes are we raising money here? And how is it meeting our goals? Is it exceeding our goals? And are we dependent on just 1 or 2 people or 1 or 2 funders? So, or is our portfolio diversified in a way that's going to be meaningful? So, and what most importantly, as board members, board leadership, what can the governing board do to support the organization as they see changes in what's happening in the universe? And we're going to talk about some of the changes that our nonprofit leaders are seeing. And how do we integrate philanthropy into this? So some organizations are super dependent on philanthropic support. Others might have more of a membership model, and some might even have earned income. So I'll put Southern University in that space. Forget the way I'm going to say this, but student butts and seats is a really big deal, because without enrollment, we don't get federal money, we don't get state money, and we don't get tuition dollars. And if our students can't afford the tuition dollars, there's got to be this foundation over here, the Valdry Center, helping save the day on that. How do we keep education affordable? How do we keep buildings the way they need to be? And that's kind of hard to believe when you're sitting in such a beautiful facility, but you know, it takes money. And this comes from that unified vision. And then how are we going to monitor? This comes from Board Source. I'm Board Source certified, and our company, Carter, the one I carry a card for, we have the governance experts that help write this, but it is cited and it is available to the public. But the board's role really in 3 bucket categories is ethics and accountability, and I'm just going to hammer these all day, but this is a nice clear slide that you could play with. Financial oversight and raising funds. This is the slide when I sit on a board or I am working with a nonprofit leader that sometimes somebody else needs to say it. Like nonprofit leaders can say it all day, but if a consultant says it, it's magical, right? In my profession, I say even Jesus couldn't turn water into wine in his own backyard. He had to leave, right? So sometimes you just need somebody else to say it. Board Source is a great resource for anybody that's looking at governance, for somebody else saying it. And they have great materials, and you'll see some of them. And then, of course, board members are responsible for helping raising funds. And that could be public and private support. That could be individuals, that could be corporations, foundations, all of that. All of the funds for the organization specifically. So we'll go into that a little bit more. But what does that really mean? The wheels of growth. This means tracking these big questions. And if you are serving on a board, you need to be having some generative conversations, not just talking about what the meeting minutes were. If you're sitting on a board and the executive director or CEO is preaching to you about all the great things that they've done, and there is no time for generative conversation as board members, I'm going to invite you to insert yourself and say, we need to have some visionary conversations about who we are, who we want to be 5 and 10 years from now, because the world is shifting very, very quickly. So I would be demanding that. Are we investing in our growth? Growth looks like money, it looks like people, it looks like infrastructure, it looks like leadership. We're going to talk about that. Are our fundraising practices ethical? And there's a lot of nefarious characters out there right now. And do we have enough support to fund our mission? Okay, so it all starts always with a strategic plan. So always the board should be asking and setting that mission and vision. Board and leadership set the core values. The board and leadership, the executive director, our CEO, helps set the mission and vision. It is the internal staff's role to execute the strategic plan. The board approves, participates in the visioning of it, but tactically, leadership executes the strategic planning goals based on the board's mission vision. And when in doubt, and when in argument, and when people start getting, squirrely in a room, I always like to say, what are our core values, and can we reset and realign on those? Because if we aren't sharing in our shared core values, none of the rest of this matters. So I love this slide. One of the things I would like to invite you over the next 5 slides to do is just think, and perhaps even write down in your notebooks, where you think your organization is. A lot of them are startups, maybe adolescents, they're beginning. Maybe they're mature. Maybe they're doing, like, the wheels are rolling, they're doing a capital campaign, things are great. They're a mature organization. Well, mature organizations have a tendency to keep doing the same thing over because they're really doing it well. And there is a threat of stagnation. So are we having those generative conversations too? Ask, what is the market share? What are other people doing? Are we only chasing ourselves? It's really hard to be the leader. I would suggest it's very difficult for Southern universities and Allen Company, because Southern is the leader of HBCUs, is one of the primary leaders of HBCUs in the space. So who are you chasing, right? Who are your models? Well, your board has to figure that out. What framework are we going to do for even higher excellence? Okay, so stagnant, and if you're doing it right and having those generative conversations, you're renewing. Otherwise, you're in a situation where you might need to dissolve and or have a brave conversation about merging with another organization in your space.
Beverly, we have a question out on the chat, and our slideshow is kind of behind us. So they're wondering, will we be able to share this with them so that they can catch up on the slides that were missed?
Absolutely.
So those of you
they
online,
can't see these slides at all?
yeah, they're not advanced, and we're working on that right now.
Okay.
So that was a question. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. And I have that on the jump drive if you want to email anybody so that they can catch up with you to that as well.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
If we could share the screen as opposed to looking at me, I think it's even better. Okay, so the slide I'm showing now is about that nonprofit life cycle and ways that you internally can measure. Sometimes that's measured in programs. Sometimes that's measured in professional leadership. Sometimes that's measured in staff, and sometimes that's measured in board. So what does it take adolescent to grow to mature? What does it take mature to grow to stagnant? What are we looking at here in stagnant if we're not evolving, or we find ourselves that we can't fund the need because somebody else is, kind of like the example I used earlier, or we've got a lot of staff turnover, or we have had huge board turnover and our boards rubber stamping everything that we do. So then, are we ready to dissolve, or are we ready to renew? So I love this because in the life cycle, it helps you see where you are on that arc. Here, and forgive this slide being a little out of whack, it's got a lot on it, but these are some of the questions as board members, and again, you're going to be shared this, but that you could start using if you're a startup in incubation phase versus are we at adolescent or growing? Are we mature? Are we stagnant in renewal phase, or do we need to shut down? So what is the duration typically of organizations like that? So a startup is usually 1 to 2 years. Adolescent growing, we're going to work out the kinks. We're those overgrown Labrador puppies. We look like we know what we're doing, but maybe we don't have frameworks underneath us, those systems and accountability. Or are we mature? We're doing okay. We're able to recruit the right teams, but are we still leading? Are we still having generative discussions? Right here in that mature phase, it's where we start seeing rubber stamped board meeting minutes. It's like, yeah, it's fine, it's good. People didn't actually read the financial statement, or they didn't actually read the strategic plan, but they're like, yeah, it's great. Fine. I call those resume builders, people that are on your board because they want to look good because your organization is awesome. But if they're not showing up, do we have a way to either challenge them, engage them, or bless and release them? And some of the materials in the back of this will help you with that. So these are kind of interesting to me, the organizational life cycle, what startup looks like. This is for the board, what an adolescent board looks like, what a mature board looks like. And these slides, if you are sitting on a board or you're a CEO or executive director, I would absolutely show your board this and ask them where they think they fit and put little red arrows. That's what I do. I think we're here. Where does the board think we are? It's just a nice test, and it gets it out of your board into best practice. Organizational life cycle for the management team. So we're not going to just let the board be on the hook. We're on the hook with the management team too. And what does that look like? Because, management always needs more staff to raise more money. Fact. And do we have professionals in that? Or are we still operating with duct tape and paper clips, right? And how do we move back into that? And then perhaps you've got founder syndrome or somebody that is retiring. We're seeing a lot of leaders that have been around for a very long time retiring out of organizations, and it has put both boards and leadership into huge mix because the next generation is not totally aligned with maybe the core values of the organization. So a reset in that is often important. So at its very core, there are 3 board roles sitting inside of the meeting. One of those is strategic, i.e. strategic planning, where are we going, how do we tactically meet these goals. One is fiduciary. Hey, here's our 990. We did our audit. Here's our gift acceptance policy, gifts coming in. Are we doing our due diligence? In most cases, this is what gets people in trouble on boards because we're stamping something, we take things in good faith, and I could tell you all about some lawsuits, but I won't. But I will if you ask me individually. So what really helps is that generative discussion. Having a board and leadership discussion that says, and I won't be on it out all day, I'm sorry, but you're in the room.
Sure.
President of the Valdry Foundation here at Valdry Center, a great leader, great fundraiser. But, rather than taking just Al's word for it, because he's super confident and super confident in his board knows what he's doing, are they giving him and or any other really successful leader to have a conversation about this is working, but here's some fears that I have for the organization? Are we really having those levels of conversation in what I would say protected space with each other? Not just when something goes wrong, but in future dreaming, but also, I'm not asking you board to solve my day-to-day challenges, but I bet most board members don't know how hard it is to hire fundraisers or to compensate them and to keep them and to find people to do data entry work in an ethical manner. I mean, these are really, but are we as boards having enough generative conversation that we have real leadership? Are we doing all 3 of these? Most say in the strategic or fiduciary. So the role of the board as a collective unit, really important. I'm gonna park right here for just a second. They're gonna reset these slides so our folks online can see them. What you need me to do?
But we can just have a general conversation.
Okay.
It's just that they won't see the slides.
Okay, so since you've seen those 3 big generative, strategic, and fiduciary conversations, those of you that are sitting in the room probably had a question that put you in this room for this particular area that falls in one of those 3 places. What are yours? I'm curious where you all see yourselves as organizations. Are you mature? Are you adolescent? Are you in stagnation? What curious questions do you have? This is the interactive part.
Well, I'll jump in, Beverly.
Thank you.
So I seem to like organizations that are in the space of adolescent.
Yep.
Because they seem like they have high energy.
Yes.
And they're, like you were
It's
when you were
exciting.
in the adolescence, like you knew how to walk, but you learned how to run.
I
you
call
learned how
that
to
we're in the
run
carnival. Like,
Yes.
I'm willing to look at the house of mirrors because I don't know it's a house of mirrors. Like,
Absolutely,
let's go.
absolutely. So it seems like those are the types of organizations. Because once you reach that immature space, it feels that stagnation.
Yes.
Like it's right there.
Yes.
So what are you going to do to kind of jog that? But is there, have you seen any organizations who are able to maintain that adolescent excitement, that adolescent visionary feeling while advancing towards a very high operational maturity?
Because I think you know the answer. I know your word. What would you do?
Well, I'm the person, I like to share vision. I like people to see what we as a group want.
So what does that take? Engagement.
Absolutely.
Planning safe conversation, like actually having a dedicated conversation around visioning, I think is a really powerful thing in a board.
Absolutely.
As opposed to the side conversations after a board meeting, the ones that, the everybody's telling you what's really going on, walking out of the room or walking into the room, right? Putting that into a visioning retreat even, or saying, this board meeting every year, we're going to dedicate to some real generative conversations. And maybe we bring in some people that are doing that work with us. And or maybe we bring in some people that are maybe adjacent to us to hear how they're doing it. Because remember, there's nothing in fundraising competition, right? So therefore, institutions of higher education in the city. What? Like, who knew? But are we bringing maybe those boards together to say, what's the state of higher education here in Louisiana? Because all of those boards run the rest of the place, right? That's here at the Valdry Center in Southern. That's LSU and the LSU Foundation. That's Franciscan University. And that is BRCC. You have a collective voice in that. What if we all came together and just said, let's have a visioning session and have a conversation about what's happening in higher education. And you might not be aware there's an attack on higher education right this second. I have organizations saying I can no longer do a first generation college student retreat because we're scared of being punished. I can't do a women's leadership retreat. Y'all, you want to see this girl's hair get on fire? We can't have a hyper-focused, how do we have more minorities in leadership conversation? I mean, that's tragic, right? What if the 4 institutions came together and had a visioning session about who could lead in that market, right? Hey, here's an idea. Southern could lead that discussion because you are not as scared maybe as your other folks on the street, or you care a lot more than maybe somebody else, but you have some shared core values. That idea sharing with people adjacent in the market, even though there is competition for butts and seats for all 4 of those institutions, without question. Could we have that conversation and maybe have new partnerships? Are we energizing of that? Does it make sense?
Absolutely.
So I love that you immediately went to vision. It's all about vision. And that's where real leadership lies. Okay, so that falls in the individual board members' real responsibilities. I did not make these up. These are guiding principles. If you put together a board orientation packet, you should absolutely have this in that orientation packet because the IRS says if you're going to take fiscal and legal responsibility for this organization, on behalf of the public trust of the United States of America, not kidding, then these are your 3 areas of responsibility. These are literally defined at the IRS and in board governance. So duty of care. I'm going to participate actively in the decision-making process. I'm going to exercise my best judgment in that decision-making. I'm going to come to it free of conflict. It's hard to do. it's really hard to leave your day job on a board and say, yeah, I got a proposal in front of these peeps, right? It's hard to do that. Stay informed and prepare for and attend all board meetings. The place I get the most phone calls is, could you come talk to our board? We need them to actually show up and or fundraise. Does that resonate with anybody? Yeah. We're going to talk about a board agreement here. Duty of loyalty, interest of the organization before personal and professional interests when acting on behalf of the organization. I dealt with this yesterday. A major donor owns an AI company, and they're having a conversation with the institution. He owns the AI company, and he's having a conversation with the institution's athletic department on a proposal. He also is a $2.5 million donor this year. Is that a conflict of interest?
Yes.
So what do you do? Say it?
Oh, I say you're supposed to excuse yourself.
Maybe, but if you're the only company in the world that does it.
You're sole source, you might need to.
Okay, so what's the process? One, sunshine disinfects, right? We disclose it.
You disclose it.
Okay.
If I'm not the only company, did I go find other companies? Did I put it out for bid? Maybe. If there are other companies. And then did my board have the conversation with my leadership about, are we comparing apples to oranges or apples to apples? Because if nobody else does it, can they do it? Can we look at it? So it's not that you can't do it. It's that you can't have outsized pressure on it. When you're in the room of the board, you are the board member and you disclose that information. Make sense?
Yes.
That's also part of the standard auditing process. All
100%.
members have to complete a disclosure form.
Yeah.
And there are multiple questions there asking if there were any conflicts or any business that was done that may be a conflict.
I've never seen in my 30-year career a board that did not have some kind of conflict of interest.
Oh, yeah.
It happens. I mean, let's put it here. You've got leaders in high industries in healthcare. Are we not going to talk to them about nursing? No, we're going to talk to them about nursing. They just need to disclose. Maybe I shouldn't vote on this particular thing. Recuse yourself. You can still be in the room. You can still provide information. Maybe you don't take a vote and you record it.
Yeah,
Right.
one strong illustration for us, recently we purchased a piece of property, the old chicken shack, and the owner of Chicken Shack, who's retired now, sits on our board. Of course, we're happy he came to us first with the opportunity because we didn't want him to go to the open market and sell it. But he had the number one. It was our general counsel drafted a resolution, right, that showed that he was recusing himself from any decision and that he was disclosing that he was providing the foundation with an opportunity to purchase the property.
Yeah. Donors and or board members, if doing their job, are making those connections for you. And we'll talk more about that. It's the disclosure, right? And it's really that personal interest statement. It's not that you can't have personal interest. It's that when you're in the board, you're acting on behalf of the organization, the one that you are seated in the board. You can go back to your office and talk about competitive advantage all day long and how are we going to serve these people, and maybe I need to put a brick wall and but transparency. I always just think in board sunshine disinfects. If we're doing everything under executive session, we have a problem. The one time boards should go into executive session once a year to talk about the CEO's compensation period, unless you're getting sued, and then you better have a process.
I have a question for you. So, in the area of duty of loyalty, say you have the board or the organization has an opportunity before it, and you're vetting people who have bid on a particular project.
Yep.
And there are board members, right, who are advocating for one of those project participants or prospects.
Yeah. I know this person, I've worked with this person, and they bring it onto the table.
Yes.
Absolutely.
How do you handle that?
Do you have more than one proposal?
Oh, yeah, more than one proposal. Yeah.
Okay.
But that board member is advocating for one of the prospects or one
So-
of the proposals.
If I'm the CEO, and this happens all day, every day,
Right.
you're looking at more than one proposal. If I am there as the CEO, I have a conversation with my board chair. And I say, hey, board chair, we don't necessarily have a conflict, but we've got somebody really advocating hard for one of these proposals. Maybe we bring in the organizations, it might take us longer, but maybe we bring those organizations in and let their leaders present, right? So construction, this happens all day, every day, all day. I mean, donors say, unless you hire my construction company, I won't give you this money. Happens all the time. Is that legal? No. Is
No,
it
it's
ethical?
quid pro quo.
No, it's quid pro quo under the definition of the IRS. So you say, oh, quid pro quo, can't do that. Love your money, but we're gonna have to have a hard wall on that, right? Okay, so maybe people present, maybe you just say to the board member, I need you in that unified vision to make sure every single person's voice in the room, besides the loudest with the deepest connection, has the ability to speak. And that's going to look like generative discussion and forced conversation. I'm gonna call on every single person in the room, get it in the meeting minutes, and say, the board had a discussion about these things, there were this, but we still agreed to hire, this firm that happens to be on our board. Make sense? Sunshine disinfects. But I'm always, it's like in consulting, sometimes you know how to do it, you just don't have time. You don't know how to do it, so you need to hire somebody that helps you do it. You need somebody else to say it. So the somebody else to say it maybe our facilities person comes in and talks about, what the brass tacks of what we're really looking at are in a master plan, for example. Or this is the only company in the United States that does this kind of ticketing system in athletics. We've looked, and here's who we looked, but we're happy to share that information, right? I'm not saying silence somebody in the room. I'm saying actively pull out the ones who are probably being quiet and force it, because this is where they are.
One of the things that we've done in the past here with the foundation board is to get the board prior to an RFP or RFQ going out to approve a process,
100%.
right? And then the process is designed to protect the entire organization, right, during that selection process.
Yeah.
And
maybe you put some outside people on that team.
Yes.
Like a little
We
task
hired
force
independent.
on that.
Yeah, we hired a third party to manage the process, select the committee, right, that would grade the proposals.
Yeah. That's a
and then-
really smart way to do it. If you have the money to do that, having an outside counsel is a really smart way.
And then if that were to occur, right, you had a board member or multiple board members advocating for.
Can you
a
defend
different-
it?
Yeah, you said, look, the process is in place.
Yeah.
And if you're not questioning the process.
Yeah.
Right, then if you believe the process was fair, that you actually voted to adopt, then.
You
we're good
see
to go.
this in searches a lot, and
Yes.
executive searches. So if we needed to find a new VP of advancement or a new chancellor or a new CEO of the hospital, they will have a selection committee. I mean, this is happening right now at LSU, and you can look at it's in the news. Now we can argue, and I will, about who is on that selection committee.
Right.
And we can argue, and I will, about the firm that was taken. But there is a process. It is a third party. It is transparent. What is not transparent and actually doesn't need to be is who are the candidates until they're a finalist. Because if you're going to recruit really high level finalists, and that includes oncology doctors to university presidents to all of the things that even an executive director of the YMCA That is usually a confidential process until you're down to one candidate for the recruitment protection of the individual being recruited, not just the organization. It's if you're going to get a really high caliber person, you got to go find them, and you got to keep that silent because they still need their day job if you don't hire them, right? So independent counsel is always helpful if you can afford it. If you cannot, then I love having a task force that is an ad hoc committee of the board that is got more than just the board on it. If I were doing that here, there would absolutely be 1 or 2 students on it. It would be representative of the population that I serve. I would argue, 52, 58% of the population, and I hope somebody here is from LSU, 58% of the population at LSU is female, and they have 2 girls on the committee, one of which is a student. Wait, make that face again. I'm not questioning the process, but if I have questions, can they defend it? The answer may be yes. Okay. What else are you doing? I'm willing to share the process. I'm willing to share the firm. That's where this loyalty depends, that duty of loyalty and duty of care. Are we vetting it in an ethical manner? And I love LSU. I have 4 degrees from there, so and I'm a professor there too. Okay, 10 basic board responsibilities: meet the mission and vision, select and support and evaluate the chief philanthropy officer. Is my nice way of saying either in this organization the CEO or the executive director. In some cases, the chief philanthropy officer is a VP reporting to a larger organization, and sometimes, so that's why it says CPO here. Ensure effective planning, adequate resources, i.e., do we have the CRM system that we need to do this? Do we have people that can do the data entry? Ms. Terry's shaking her head because this is hard, right? Ensure manage resources effectively. You, as the board or the trustees, we know that they're managing our resources right. So, for example, I love seeing construction on this campus. What that tells me is there's a campus master plan and somebody's worried about capital outlay all day long. All day, every day. I sat next to the vice chancellor of the Ag Center on an airplane, and he was talking about moving the bee lab over here from LSU. Well, I happen to be a beekeeper, right? Okay, so now you got a bee problem. I don't know if you know that, but we rescued some bees out of a tree over here. So they're having to think in a campus master plan about, okay, we have the United States Bee Lab here, which is a really big deal. See, I'm a beekeeper, it's a really big deal. But occasionally those bees swarm. Can we control that? Are they going to wind up in our 400-year-old oak tree, which is a really fun rescue, by the way. But you don't want that because, bees sting students, right? They sit under tables. So is somebody thinking about that? The board didn't need to get into who are we going to hire on the beekeeper. They need to be excited about the USDA, and they need to know that the master plan people are on it. They're mitigating that risk because people can die from a bee sting. This is a really good problem to have. Why? Because it makes you one of the most important land grant institutions in agriculture in the country. Did you know that? You don't have bees, you don't have anything. We don't eat. It's a really big deal. Okay, determine and monitor the programs and services. I would bet, and this is not a negative reflection, but I would bet if I asked your board of supervisors, they're all appointed, if they knew that you just had this huge win in the USDA lab moving from Ben-Hur over here, that's a story they should be telling all day, every day, right? That's part of that shared vision. Okay, so that's the story that you need them to tell, so Allen Company can build them a huge master, whatever it is they need over there. Make sense? Okay, so it's hard in bigger organizations, but then how are you gonna enhance your public image? I mean, that vice chancellor really had it on an airplane. There were 5 people listening about the Bee Lab. I was like, this is amazing. He's telling the story, right? So one of our roles as board members is in fundraising is amplifying the message, and we'll talk about that. So you set direction, you ensure resources, and you provide oversight. Does the board get involved in human resource decisions?
No, only the CEO.
Say it again for the people in the back.
No, only the hiring, selecting of the CEO.
The CEO is in charge of his or her staff. Board should never get involved in the hiring or firing of that, except,
In the absence of the CEO.
and,
And if it's a whistleblower.
yes,
Okay.
CFRE granted. You need to have it built into the whistleblower policy, which is required by law. So we're going to talk about that. So you're protecting the assets. You got that planning. Do y'all notice that these are the exact same responsibilities on 5 different slides? They're really important. They're just reordered. Okay, what is the most important board thing for the board for the next 2 to 5 years? What is the most important thing for our board to be thinking about over the next 2 to 5 years? Not because I am part owner in an AI company, but AI governance. If you are not having that conversation in your itty bitty and great big conversation organizations, if you are well behind the game, you better catch up really fast. And I'm gonna help you do that today. Okay, expectations. Wouldn't this be amazing if every board member just attended all the board meetings and actually read the agenda and the materials beforehand?
That'd be awesome.
Wouldn't it be amazing if they actually served on one committee and provided advice and expertise? And I'm going to highlight the upon request. You might own a marketing firm, but we are a different kind of marketing. We want your voice in the board, but we also have marketing experts. So that's a fine balance between boards and organizations, for example. Advocate on behalf of the organization, of course, leverage the network and development funds. So what does that look like in brass tacks of fundraising? So those of you that are going from an adolescent to a mature board, these are the ways that people talk about those newer versus more established. I would suspect that these 3 folks in the room right here that carried the business card to raise money for Southern never actually use the word fundraising. They use the word philanthropy because they are a highly sophisticated organization. And philanthropy as a word means love of humankind. So we are elevating a mission and a vision. Yes, charities have problems. Yes, it's about the money. Can we actually sustain it? You know, are we raising enough money? Is it a short-term crisis or a long-term problem? Are we just raising money around impulse giving, i.e. swipe right, Giving Tuesday, or I haven't had this gala on this day, and short-lived satisfaction? When we really move into impact fundraising with board members, that includes things like peer-to-peer solicitation, them telling the story, them helping introduce the organization to their larger network of people who care, then we're really getting into the solution business. And that's where that leadership and generative conversation comes in. It's not how much money do we need to raise this year. It's if we dream really big, what do we look like in 10 years and how many people can we serve? How can we be bigger, faster, stronger? It's not about the need, it's about the vision. And by the way, people do not give to need, except for in a crisis. And we don't want that kind of fundraising. And if you need that kind of fundraising, call me. I do that. But that's different. That is deflection of money because you are in a real crisis situation. But it's real philanthropy is about investing in the organization for its long-term success and those that they serve. Is this a good slide for y'all?
Yeah, that's okay.
Absolutely. I actually have this as a checklist for board members. Like, where do you think we are on the scale? And they have to rank where they are 1 to 5. Which is a fun way to look at this slide. So,
Can I ask you a
philanthropy,
question?
please.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but back to the last
Me
slide.
too. Yeah.
Okay. So, and this will help me learn, because I've been in the role for a year, use case. When we get in the fall, there's a student need for scholarships.
Yep.
Call it like that, emergency fund.
How long have we known that we need this?
Well, it's been happening since I've been in college, and that's
Yeah.
since 1989.
Okay, so it's not a crisis. It
Yeah,
is a
so-
crisis for the student, but it's not a problem that we haven't known about.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So when you look at that situation between charity giving, so it's a problem, it's a short-term crisis, and it's the crisis on the different colleges. And then at Southern, we purge some students. Yes, when that happens. And then you got purging, scheduling, housing, etc.
Because they
So-
don't have the wraparound services to meet their tuition needs kind of thing.
Or the money hadn't gotten to their student account, you know, I got two
Because
Southern
it's
where I
a
was
lot.
remember.
Oh, wow, that's
So-
cool.
Yeah, the two other kids. So when you look at that as a development, because I'm coming out of sciences and engineering,
Oh, yeah,
all right, and parents, because I'm alum,
yeah.
you know, I get a lot of calls from folks and family. How do you tell that story when you're saying charity and philanthropy? Because it seems like the arrow can go both ways.
100%.
And,
And you had just described both. As an institution, we know the students specifically here at Southern University, we know, and this is not unique to Southern, this is every public higher education institution in the state of Louisiana, period. Because we have a poverty rate here that is over 60%, period, right? So, and where the FAFSA, the federal government, thinks that I can give and my availability of funds to give is judged on how much in my house 4 people make. Me, my husband, my ex-husband, and his wife. It doesn't matter that I pay all the tuition, right? But the financial aid package is banked on 3 people who make a lot of money who actually don't contribute to the cost, right? Happens all day, every day. Okay, so in that scenario, that might be a long-term crisis. Here, because I'm betting that Alan Robert can quantify how many students over a period of time from a retention perspective we are losing that literally check the box that money is the reason that I could not come here and or, because we track all that, and or I wasn't able to stay here or there is a gap. If it's happening year over year, it is a short-term crisis for those 5 students. Do we have a fund that can meet that? Through a philanthropy effort that we're going to address on a long-term basis. Is it big enough that it moves into our strategic plan? How many people, how much money do we need to serve the approximately 20 to 50 students that are facing this every year? That's when you start getting into these conversations. Are we going to be a debt-free university? Are we going to be a barrier-free university? We hear that a lot. So, is that need-based scholarships or are those merit-based scholarships? Merit-based scholarships, by the way, a lot of students, if they're high achieving, turn away a lot of money that could be redirected, but probably isn't to folks that are making B's because they got to work 3 jobs, right? So the institution's board conversation and visioning is, what are we going to do so that this isn't a problem year over year? We're going to raise money for a major emergency fund or a student success fund or scholarships. And hey, Al, is that just merit-based or is that also need-based? And where are most of those students living? Where are they coming from? It might be an institution like Southern, different than a lot of institutions. It's very likely out of state. It's not just in-state. So that's where it's a philanthropy conversation. The urgent is the 5, maybe students. The long-term solution is we know we're going to have 5 to 15 every year. What are we doing as a board to solve that problem? So you're not getting a phone call every single time for this particular person. You're getting a much deeper, higher level investment conversation about how to solve it. Does
And
that make
that's
sense?
That's a very good question, all right? I know
It
all
is.
of us deal with it, right? We have constituents, volunteers, right? Even our students, right, that come to the organization, and it's a crisis for them. They want us to solve their problem immediately, but does it really fit into your long-term, right, strategy, right? And do you have the capacity to address it at that time. And I think it's important that we know what our long-term goals are and where that crisis may fit. And then you provide those wraparound resources in that. But
I'm gonna take it out of Southern. Let's put it in medical schools. Medical schools, I'll put it in medical schools in this state. LSU and Tulane, medical schools. All do their rounding here because we have a much bigger, robust medical system. Most people don't realize that. Those residents spend 6 weeks here and they are poor. They are $250,000 in debt. Most of them are first generation. They are poor. They don't have the ability to rent an apartment for a year to stay in it for 6 weeks. That's a housing crisis, but it's one that happens all day, every day. Well, it is not unique to one institution, right? It is an LSU Health Science Center issue. It is a Tulane issue. It is a nursing school at Southern issue because your preceptors have to do that. You know that conversation I was talking about higher ed? What if we brought all of those short-term crisis problems to the table and say, hey, what if we had housing over in the medical district that we collectively raise money for, where students could actually rotate every 6 weeks for free? And here's where you get really exciting with donors. They live on the second floor, and the first floor is maybe retail space. And we want to invite all of our friends, and we don't care that you own this coffee company or that Cowboy shop. We're going to give you the opportunity to play in that. That's a public-private partnership. Maybe collectively, y'all do that public-private partnership, get some tax credits. You see these things happen all the time. The Valdry Center does this exceptionally well in their commercial real estate. Okay, maybe you do that. And the scholarships these guys are raising money for are for the students that are Southern students that might need that on a short-term basis. There's a fund for that. We know it happens all the time. Can we solve a bigger problem? What partners do we need to? Make sense?
Yeah, right.
And donors get much more excited about $100,000 legacy conversation than their $10,000 over 10-year conversation for things they're not quite sure are the sponsorship team. Does that resonate? Howard does this better than anybody. Howard does this better than anybody. They're doing it right now with their medical school up in Baltimore. It's impressive. And they're bringing all kinds of partners to the table. Of course, they got $1 million from Mackenzie Scott, so that helps.
Yes.
Okay, so where is that money coming from? Speaking of Mackenzie Scott, I'm not going to spend time on this, but the Valdry Center has this available. The Lilly School of Philanthropy is the front runner in all things research and philanthropy. The reason I show you this is 66% of the money given away in any given year is from individuals. Foundations, who owns those by law? Individuals. Because I die, it's my money. It's not my corporation's money. I give it to you. That's individuals. So doing the math there, we need to spend a lot of time with individuals, not necessarily corporations. This is shrinking. And frankly, if you are not youth sports or higher education, you are not going to get this money because it's too controversial. Or unless you're a United Way, you're not getting this money. Maybe a Boys and Girls Club, probably not. You're getting all of this right here. This is the fastest growing foundations. Why? Because you have billionaires putting money into philanthropy, and I'm air quoting that a little bit. It is philanthropic when Warren Buffett gives $8 billion to his children's foundations. Sooner or later, that by law has to get dispersed. That is donor advised funds and that is foundations. But technically, that money is sitting in a bank and it has been given away. They are ruled by the IRS, but it is still not here. It is not being given out here. So these gifts to grant making foundations right here, this 11% actually at some point gets redistributed all over here. Make sense? This is actually a growing category to individuals because of IRS now, and wealthy people are really smart about this. They can give their kids up to 8, or anybody in their family, anybody they want, every year, cash, $18,000, $18,000, $18,000, $18,000. That's what's represented in that to individuals. Yeah, look at that face. I don't have that problem. Like, can I donate $18,000 to my kids for their $56,000 tuition bill? Not exactly. But this is the greatest shrinking. This is the greatest shrinking. Now, in the United States, it is not shrinking in what I would consider the African American churches, largely Baptist, Southern Baptist, and evangelical, not shrinking. We believe deeply in butts and seats. It is shrinking in every other faith: Muslim, Islam, Buddhist, Judaism, Christian, all of that. And I'm not saying that those aren't Christian organizations, but here's some really good news. In this state, the most philanthropic people are, you ready? Who do you think? Old white guys?
No.
No. No, they're given to the foundations and to the 18,000 kids. Yeah. It is African American women over the age of 50 who make less than $40,000 a year. Boom. What does that tell you? People give to institutions that are mission driven and align with their personal values. It's an emotional decision. But this is shrinking, and this should scare us because we are now the teachers of philanthropy. We used to rely on religion for that. This one should also scare us a little bit because for the first time we've done here. It used to be second. This used to be 32%, y'all. 32% less than 10 years ago. So we are not, most people learn how to give in either education and or butts and seats in churches. And I'll say churches probably more than any other faith. Churches and synagogues. Yeah.
Let me ask a question about the prior slide, this one, yes. So the individuals being that largest portion of the pie, I know this is not directly towards education.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of like all
This is all of the money given away, recorded on tax returns in the United States. And this is where it goes.
So with religion shrinking, do you have any data that shows how this is broken down in education?
Yes.
So what percentage?
Yeah, so Giving USA, don't pay for it, call me. Do pay for it, they're amazing. This is part of a larger deck. It's actually really expensive. I would suggest that the Valdry Center probably owns this deck. I own it, happy to share it with the Valdry Center because I'm part of the team and I bought it. But there is an entire deck on all of these where that giving is distributed. So you could see like corporations versus individuals. I will tell you right now, it's all individuals in education. And there is a big debate right here in these foundations. And the big debate looks like the Gates Foundation or the Bloomberg Foundation or public schools versus charter schools and that sort of thing. But that is big money, but it's not anywhere close. It's going to look more like 80%. And if that school has religion on top of it, that goes through the roof.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay, so why do people really give? I want you to think about why you give. Is it to organizations that fit? And I'm going to say, how do you give your time? How do you give your resources? I.e., you could use my boardroom. You could host something at my house. Time, resources, influence. Hey, I know you have this amazing network. Would you be willing to open these 5 doors for me? You're a hospital CEO. Would you open the door to these other CEOs for me? That's influence. Reputation is, if their name is on our letterhead, they're a really big deal. I'm not talking about influencers, but I'm not talking about influencers. like Libby Dunn, LSU loves Libby Dunn and Flo J until they don't, because they're individuals that have their own corporations, right? They speak for themselves. But is it are they great representatives of the institution? 100%. They get LSU in the news all day, right? We might not like the news. It's just, Flo J's getting a fist fight with Caitlin, but, right? But this happens all the time. And so who are the heroes at your institution? And can they get their influence? The fifth of those is money. How can I get my resources, my influence, my reputation, my time, my engagement, and then money? And how does that make us feel? Board members' role in fundraising. You have to understand that expectation. So I suspect over here, you guys have to do some kind of performance evaluation, right? Annually. Yeah, because you work for the state. So you have to, right? And those performance evaluations typically look like, did I show up on time? Did I do what I say I was going to do? Did I open the doors that I said I was going to open? There's some kind of metrics around every job, right? Well, there should be no difference for a board member. Now, the teeth in it is, there's no teeth, except for you better put in your policies ways that you can bless and release them. You're not showing up in our board policy. You have to meet at least 3 of the 4 meetings a year. Every year, we're going to have a conversation that looks like a board agreement that says, how do you want to spend your 5 influence, reputation? I would have a guy on my board that could open 5 doors for me. I'm like, I literally need your face, and I need to make 5 phone calls a year. And those 5 phone calls a year kind of look like, the CEOs of maybe, publicly traded oil companies. I can't call him, then I answer my phone, but I'll answer his. That is enough for him to be perhaps on my board, as long as he'll show up and have some agency in that. If he won't have that agency, can I deploy him in another way? Maybe I can make him an honorary board member and have him on my letterhead. Make sense? Okay. Give proportionate, and give first. What does that mean? Proportionate. I do not like give or get policies. Because some people can, $1,000 gift is huge. If I'm giving you $1,000, me personally, I love you. Some people, I'll give you $10,000 a year. Why are you dumbing that down to 1,000? It's mutual sacrifice. It's when I pass the plate in the church, I say, okay, you're going to get $20,000, you're going to give $100, and we're going to have an individualized conversation about what that looks like for you. Okay? And that can be done once you're in a board agreement. So this organization, if your board members can't say this organization is in your top 1 or 2 philanthropic priorities, they probably don't need to be on your board. You're going to make a gift. You're going to help us identify other prospects. You might cultivate and engage other donors. It could be as simple as, hey, Robert is going to be in Atlanta. You're my fraternity brother. I'm going to vouch for Robert. Would you sit down and have a 30-minute conversation with him about Southern University? They can ignore his phone call all day. They can't ignore the fraternity brother with the secret handshake, right? That can be the engagement, right? So put people in places where they're comfortable, okay? And ask them, what does that look like for you? Okay, board members' role, again, understand those expectations. So what is a board cycle? Well, we don't want people on the board for all of eternity. So we need some bylaws that state what are my term limits and what is my job and what are those expectations. And are we constantly feeding that pipeline, right? So who are we developing to take over these board seats that we've had these people in that are giants? Are we growing new giants? Does it make sense? That's really hard to do right now because our traditionalists, our 80-year-olds, are not retiring, right? And their 60-year-old kids have not been developed to be on boards because their parents have been doing it, or even to give to them because we haven't engaged them. So have we identified who those are? Are we cultivating them in ways that are meaningful to them so that we can recruit them? And y'all see, just saying, hey, will you be on my board is not, it's the opening door. Then you got to orient them of who we are, what we do. We got to involve them. We got to educate them. We got to evaluate their performance. We, being the board chair, needs to say, hey, board, how are we doing collectively as a board? And how are we doing individually with our board members? Okay, this is a literal job on behalf of the IRS. We're not kidding about that. So board development. Everybody has characteristics and behaviors of high-performing board members. Do we have those standards set of what that looks like? It might be meeting attendance. It might be giving. It might be, hey, you must be at least 2 Southern University football games, one of which is homecoming every year. Tell people your expectations so they can meet them. It's like kids, right? I've raised three boys, and I had ridiculous expectations. But you know what? People will meet your expectations if you tell them what they are. People want to meet your expectations. And, can you lower that bar? Maybe. But now they're all, relatively, stable young adults. But they met expectations like the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. If you set the bar and you give them the badges, you tell them what the markers are. If you want to hit the markers, right? I don't want to be unsuccessful. Okay, board profile tool. How do we find these people? Do we as a board agree on what we need? Do we have diversity on our board? And our ad hoc committees, because 58% of our people are women, I'll say it again. Or do we have former participants in what we have done on our board that can speak to it? I love that you're an alum, right? And you can speak to my experience and maybe my experience with my children somewhere else, right? Okay, skills and abilities, spheres of influence. Sitting in this room, that should also say the Divine Nine. Mission-related experience, mission-related interest. If I were running a capital campaign here, and I'm not, but if I were, I would have at least 3 members of Divine Nine representing the Divine Nine fraternities and sororities, representing 3 different generations at minimum on my cabinet. Because we can win a presidency. Not kidding, we can raise money. Fact. So if I'm in New Orleans, I don't move without all the Catholic school alumni. I need somebody that went to Mount Carmel, and somebody that went to Jesuit, and somebody that went to St. Augustine. I knew who I was talking to.
St. Mary's.
I didn't say Ben Franklin.
Right, you can say Ben Franklin.
Right, okay, so you need a board profile tool, and it needs a whole lot more than this. Because we're not filling gaps. There are no token anybody. This also needs to look like, what skills do we need? What influence do we need? What do we need people that understand marketing? Do we need another fundraiser on the board? Dangerous proposition. Do we need, what do we need skill set wise? Like you're hiring for the job that's going to suit your mission. So this is a very poor place to start. The board source for free will give you a tool that you can use with your board, even to have a discussion about it. Okay, year-round board development. Every board meeting should have some kind of development opportunity. That development can look like education of what you do in the organization. Hey, we're going to go take a tour. The students can speak. Hey, we're going to have somebody come in and talk about excellence in board governance. Hey, we're going to have somebody come in and talk about AI because it's something that we're going to have to deal with from a governance perspective. It should be in your board room, i.e., next board meeting, we're going to review the 990. The board meeting before, we're going to take you to school on what you need to be looking for. We're going to point out the things and explain to you what a 990 looks like because you're actually signing it. 990 is a tax return, shows the money, and so that they can give you some feedback on what they're seeing and those financial statements. Bring in an outside consultant to talk about that, somebody who prepares those. These are the things as a board member you should be looking at. Build the perfect board. What characteristics do we need in board members? I have no idea why this is run together. It's not on the slides. Why do we need board members? What do we need you to do? And what should be on our board composition matrix? This is part of that generative discussion at least once a year before, 2 to 3 months before nominations start happening for boards. So to build the perfect board, review your articles of incorporation, particularly your bylaws, your Form 990 org chart, and what? A letter of invitation and a board job description. The most prestigious board I was ever asked to serve on was like this. Riding in an elevator in a football stadium, a dean said, "Hey, I really want you to be on our board." Is that a yes? You want me to take legal and fiscal responsibility for $300 million a year. You want to ask me in the elevator?
Be a nice elevator.
How long was the search process to see you here, Al? Probably 6 months. It probably had a search firm. It probably interviewed a whole lot of people, and I remember this because we were really excited that Al got the job. And why would we not do that for a board member? Oh, by the way, an elevator tells me as a CEO or executive director or the board chair, you are not serious about your organization because you are taking legal and fiscal responsibility for it, and they need to understand it. It needs to be an orientation and a job negotiation before the fact. Not, oh, by the way, you're famous, let me have you, or you know how to raise money. You can't do that seated, but it's a negotiation. How do you feel about that? It should involve your board members and an actual job description. Okay, so what does that look like? Here's a sample job description. This one happens to be really event heavy, this particular organization, but we expect you to participate in one of these, maybe even share one of these. Typical board roles: board chair, vice chair, immediate past chair. That can look like president, vice chair, and immediate past chair. I mean, there are different words for these, but essentially, okay, secretary, treasurer, and the director members. These folks aren't necessarily executive leadership, executive committee. These folks are. Very frequently, the CEO of the organization is the non-voting secretary of the organization. Fact, right? Mm-hmm. Treasurer, if you have a CFO, is in big organizations very frequently the non-voting member that is the CFO of an organization. Make sense? Okay. BoardSource has absolutely great resources for all of this. Typical board committees: executive committee are the folks that I just said. They are the ones that go into executive session when somebody does something stupid or we need to hire somebody excellent. Something stupid looks like somebody stole money, somebody abused a child. We see a lot of that. If you want some real hard news, go look at the Boy Scouts in the last 10 years. Because when you're a board member, as I was at the board of the Boy Scouts, and they have the largest class action lawsuit in history, you cannot legally resign until the lawsuit is settled. What? So when you have a $1 billion lawsuit and you serve on the, board of directors of the local council, you're taking legal and fiscal responsibility for your council, which may or may not be at risk of, millions of dollars. And if those millions of dollars are not satisfied by your agreement, you personally, as a board member, take legal and fiscal responsibility. Wait, what? If I have a car lot, or a jewelry store, that's no joke. If you're Beverly Thompson, it's fine. You're going to take my house, and it's not fun because that's the only house I got. Right? Okay. So I say that to actually scare you. Typical board committees, executive governance, these are the folks that are making sure that you're following those bylaws that you have. Nominating committee, finance and audit, by law, must have those, and development, and now we're starting to call that philanthropy. These are the standing boards. If you have more committees than this, and you bring me in as a consultant, you better be really, really, really good at defending why you need another thing on your board. Less committees, better. Why? Sunshine disinfects. And what we know is leadership has the least amount of information. So what happens in all those little committees might not make it up to your CEO, and it might not make it up to the board chair. So these are the policies, yeah.
Is it, on the previous slide, is it okay to merge the governance responsibility with the executive?
Yes, and I actually highly recommend it.
Okay.
Highly recommend it.
I mean, that's how we're currently set up now.
Yeah. Some will
Some break it out.
put
I've seen
nominating
that.
and governance, but I like executive and governance because that's really where governance is the word. And we don't need that. And most times when you see a governance committee, it is that committee plus person.
Yeah, I sit on one board that it is broken out. Executive is different because it's an all-boy Catholic school, St. Aug.
Such a good school.
Yeah, very good school. And the executive, the board, right, are independent business people, right? But we also have a board of trustees, which is the Josephite Society. And so the reason, the weight that they give, right, is through governance. And that governance committee is responsible for hiring the president and CEO, also making other responsibilities. So that's why it's different.
Balance. Well, it's
But
kind of
we
like
have-
here, right? You have a supporting foundation, your fiscal legal responsibility of the supporting foundation is actually different than the board of supervisors over here.
Correct.
Now, this institution follows their strategic direction, but their strategic plan looks like how they need to execute it.
Yeah,
Makes
but we're
sense.
having that conversation now, St. Aug, because, you know, the executive committee, the officers, all of them are not on the governance committee. And they want to have buy-in, right, and going back to their fiduciary responsibility, they're saying, okay, I'm an officer, so how can I not be involved in this decision?
So maybe it's a recommendation, and then the executive committee makes the ultimate decision. I was on a board we thought had fiduciary responsibility, and they did not.
Right.
And when we got into the bylaws, the first question, I had to hire a new CEO. I was like, let me see your bylaws. We're going to follow your bylaws.
Yeah.
We followed the bylaws. Turns out they didn't have the fiduciary responsibility to make the decision. It was actually couched in another major organization. I said, we need to go over and have a conversation with that CEO. And the CEO was like, that's great. I said, well, you can't just wave it off. Somebody over here has to vote on the CEO because it's a compensation package. So this group of advisory people handled the search, transparent, made the recommendation to the founder and the CEO. And that CEO brought it to her executive committee of the board for the stamp of approval with the entire process of that.
Yeah. And that issue comes up, and this is the question. So just using that as an illustration, because the Josephite Society actually owns the not-for-profit organization.
Yeah.
But they have transferred the management and oversight responsibility to the board.
So the MOU has all the weight.
Correct. And so
the
everything that we do
MOU
on the
hires,
board
yeah.
has to be, not everything, but the really important things, right, activities have to be ratified by the society.
So
And
this-
so that, it gets complicated
It gets really
sometimes in terms of governance and like who really is in charge. And we
Can I
believe
make
it's
a
the Josephite.
recommendation? Because that board has a lot of lawyers on it.
Oh, a whole bunch.
Yeah, because they're really successful. That school's really successful. Like, you see somebody walking around with a St. Aug hat, you better ask him for money. Fact. Fact. Okay, that being said, and this is not a ploy for business, but lawyers will over-lawyer it. Bring in a governance expert to have that conversation. I suspect you're that governance expert in the room, and
Yeah, a couple of them.
yeah. So I became really smart in the Boy Scout conversation because I'm the only girl. I am absolutely the token girl. Back, they told me when they asked. So back. So I raised my hand. I was like, "Do we have D&O insurance?" And they're like, "Our D&O and directors and officers insurance was not up to date." So I'm like, "Gentlemen, you might want to have that up to date with our names listed by tomorrow, because we A, have to have it by law, and B, we're going into a lawsuit." And they were like, "Oh." And when I said, when they go through all of this property in a settlement that we own here, they're coming after your car lot. There was a horror in the room. I got real smart. And then I said, how many gift agreements do we have around all of this property? Not many. Here's a fun fact. If you're in a lawsuit as an organization, if you have gift agreements around any tangible property and or assets, i.e. money, land, oil wells, don't care what it is, buffalo, all the things, it gets carved out of lawsuit. So gift agreements become really important, right? Yeah, okay, so those are some of the trends to watch here. If you wanna listen to other people besides me, go, Google board governance and billionaires, and you'll see quite a bit of this. A lot. Mark Cuban specifically. Rising time commitments and complexity. I bet Al spent a whole lot of time at St. Aug. I spent days, weeks, months with the Boy Scouts. Couldn't talk about it. And for the record, they did the right thing. We acted in an extraordinarily ethical way here in the city. And that ethics look like, if we have any situations where children have been abused, we are requiring them to give us a list of abusers. So that's where legal and ethical responsibility, you gotta get real noisy. Like, are we gonna stand here and do the right thing, even if the right thing hurts us? Like bills in the legislature, sexual assault. We are going to do the right thing. And it is hard to do the right thing when those conflicts come up. So risk and time commitments, that's the National Association of Corporate Directors. That's public and private nonprofit. Risk oversight, cyber, AI, reputation. You should have a crisis communications policy. If you're in higher education, if you are in media, if you deal with children. What is the process we're going to follow, not if, but when something goes wrong? And make sure that board composition matches those skills. Also, governance things to watch. Rise of recurring giving. This is the thing we talk about all day in my practice at Carter. It's not just big gifts, it's can we get you to make recurring gifts? So I can tell you right now, I have 4 drafts on my, I can tell you on my checking account, I can tell you exactly what I give, because I've stopped giving everywhere and I get to the 4 things that I really care about, and they're on automatic draft. Mm-hmm. And the organizations like it because they can count on me. And organizations also like it because of something called RFM data, recency, frequency, metric. All of those organizations should be talking to me about a major gift, and most of them are. And I'm not a major gift donor to them in some cases, but I'm important, and or a planned gift. So that leads me to this. Donor advice funds and expansion. Some organizations, particularly around medicine and higher ed, are even putting donor advice funds inside of their foundations, like this one. Digital and hybrid stewardship expectations. What does that mean? That means these shoes right here, I bought from Nordstrom's because Nordstrom's knows I like red high heels. Because every time I open up my browser, I'm gonna say it again, Nordstrom high heels, Nordstrom high heels, Nordstrom high heels, and I want you to watch your Facebook. It's gonna say Nordstrom high heels. Red patent specifically. So they just feed that to me, right? They're feeding the beast. Guess what? Nonprofits are better at that than anybody. And we're doing aggressive message testing to see what messages you open, how we use it. We're using that data. The question for you as board members and leaders is, are we meeting stewardship expectations with that? Are we thanking people appropriately? And or is it ethical? Are we doing it in a way that we would be willing to show in the public? And that's where AI comes in. And so AI oversight conversations is an ethics conversation in governance. It lives inside of your policies anywhere risk is involved. HR, finance and audit, governance, nominating. So for example, in nominating, are we using optical character recognition to find out, like to review resumes on campus or scholarships? Of course we are. We've been doing it for years. Are we using ethical practices to find the right people? Are we saying, I only want to hire people from Howard or Harvard? Those demographics look very different, right? So how are we using these tools in order to make that, are we having some unintended consequences? So vendor accountability and compliance, your job is to make sure that in spending policies, you have all of the vendor things around AI. You might be ethical, but are your vendors ethical? So for example, I take a lot of donor data. Everybody I take donor data from should have me under a lock and key with NDA, and they should be asking who my vendors are, because it is hypersensitive data. Right? It's got donor information. So that being said, fundraising, same thing, risk, ethics, bias, privacy violations. It is an ethical framework that you need to be looking at. You have these questions. I would go back as leaders in my board and ask all these questions. Do we have policies around AI use in fundraising? These are the questions you need to be asking. Here's the problem. There are only frameworks here. There are no legal standards yet. So you have to do what is legal and ethical within your organization and set those best practices. Don't say, no, we're not going to do it. Say, yes, but this is how we're going to do it ethically. Does it make sense? Okay. So trends to watch, all of those things. Privacy, sustainability, and long-term thinking, really around that. How do we build culture of philanthropy? Always governance and accountability and audits and oversight. You need somebody looking at that all day long because every state law changes. And like Southern is in a campaign right now. I have no doubt that they're raising money in 50 states. They have to be registered to fundraise in all of those 50 states. Did you know that? It's a pain. It's really expensive. Did we budget for that? Ask the question. Okay, so these trends to watch, I've given you all the questions. That is the end of this presentation. I'm going to flip through this. These are the sources that you need to have at your disposal so that you know to meet these requirements. So this is from GuideStar. By the way, if you're an organization that hasn't turned your information 990 into GuideStar, do it. If you turn in your 990 to GuideStar, you become a gold organization, and all of their tools are free for gold organizations. Revenue, this is literally the law, because I'm just going to about that. And again, GuideStar, data at a glance, they have all of those things listed. And this is how you read a 990. And 990s are literally the IRS's trust with you as board and leaders to meet those rules. So knowing how to read is probably important. So I left those for you. I really apologize that I was a little late and we went over time, but I'm curious. I'm here to stand with any questions that you have.
Well, thank you so much, Beverly. Anyone in the room? I know we thank you all for being present, and those of you who are online. I think the count got up to at least 30 individuals, which is fantastic.
That's amazing.
This is YouTube Live, and so it is reviewable again. So if you need to go back and listen to Beverly's commentations throughout her slides, we do strongly ask you to do that. You can pull it up in a meeting that you all are having, pull out some excerpts between what time and what time. I've done that before, that you want to highlight in a meeting that you might have within your own organization, so that they at least have that.
Yeah, we'll send this in a PDF form so you can use it too.
Yes, yes. So Beverly has been an adjunct faculty with the Valdry Center for Philanthropy for at least 5 years. That's how long I've been here. Maybe longer,
2017, I think.
maybe longer than
I'm
that.
so grateful for that. Y'all have no idea how grateful. And what
Yes.
music brings to my life. People are like shocked at that all the time. It's truly a blessing to be affiliated with such an excellent organization. I don't say that because I say that because this boss.
So we want to thank you. This is a small token of appreciation. She's probably gotten something of everything that we have. So this
I don't know about that.
a small token of appreciation.
How exciting.
for you.
Thank you.
And we have some light refreshments for those.
I will stick around for questions if anybody has them, because this is heavy stuff. Yeah, it's hard to talk about governance and be exciting.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. I want to thank you. I know since we established the center, you've been a big part of what we've done here, not only with the center, but with the university and our Ph.D. program.
So fun. I teach over there.
School of Public Policy. So you are a big favorite of all of those
I
students
do
who
get
have
pretty good
participated
reviews at
in that
the
cohort.
mental school.
Right. I had a conversation with Laquita Thomas, who just finished.
Yeah.
Right, so our former Alumni Federation president, national president, and she said she was going to be online. She was listening. She was good.
Oh, yeah,
And,
good.
she
And
was
by the way,
looking
I
forward
love
to
her. I love
hearing
how
from
she
her.
doing the Boy Scouts.
Good. So,
Well,
Thank
thank you for that. And like total plug for the Mandela School of Public Policy. If you are considering a PhD, if you already have a master's degree, and you are considering a PhD, the Mandela School of Public Policy, particularly in the nonprofit space, as we were talking about, nonprofit leadership, if that is something that you aspire to. It is worth it, not just because of the faculty that they bring in, as a company excluded, but because of the cohorts of people that are in those rooms. I will always teach at the Valdry Center. I will teach at, as long as they let me, and at the Mandela School. And it's because I learned so much in those rooms. I mean, I've met senior vice presidents from Salesforce and VP from Howard and somebody from Morehouse's Fund, and people, the head of recruiting for Sasol worldwide in those courses. These are powerhouse cohort rooms that when you're breathing that air, you literally are in a cohort with these people, and it gives you an extraordinarily international network. So if you're considering that,